Okay, you're very welcome back to the Rossie Podcast. I'm joined by the Roscommon Hurl sports editor Ian Cooney. To look back on Roscommon's 19-point win in Ruislip against London last Saturday. I suppose job done, Ian. It's as simple as that. You know, I was chatting to Shawnee McDermott last week, and he said whether Roscommon win by 7 or 8 or by 20, you know, a win's a win. Like, you know, you're not going to get a whole pile from this game. And in fairness to Roscommon, they were efficient and did the job well.
They did the job very well, Darragh. I thought, aside from maybe that 10-minute spell through the first half where London got back level, Roscommon were completely in control of the game. Thought it was very interesting that Roscommon won the toss and Jimmy Murtagh decided to play into the wind, and the wind 1-6 to no score up. So you could see that, you know, Roscommon were going to, you know, lay down a marker early, and they were very good early on. They sort of lost the way a bit, but I put that down maybe to the strength of the breeze. I don't think people appreciate how strong the breeze actually was. London kicked a couple of 2-pointers, got a bit of momentum, and in this new game, you know, you get back level. But Roscommon kicked on again, and you know they were good in the second half with the win behind them. Outscored London by 115-3, won by 19 points. I don't think there was any bigger winning margin over the weekend by any team. So yeah, job done, and it's on to Salt Hill now.
Yeah, because you mentioned the win there, and probably, you know, anyone who maybe been watching on the GA Plus stream or listening into the game probably wouldn't have, you know, maybe not given the win as much credit, because I was actually behind the goal for some of the first half, and even just at pitch level, it was like it was going straight down the pitch, and I think Jeremy might have missed a free, you know, from a scoreable position in the first half. So it was a strong breeze, and I suppose if you turned on at half time and saw 110-10, you might have said Roscommon are in bother, but it never felt like that. It always felt like Roscommon were going to kick on in the second half, bit like Galway did in New York last night as well.
Yeah, I mean, the wind, as you say, was really, really strong. I was down on the pitch beforehand, and until you were actually down there, you couldn't really appreciate how strong it was. It was going straight down the field. A couple of balls went over the net and landed on the hospitality tent, shall we call them, in both halves. But yeah, I think Roscommon at half time, you know, would have been probably happy enough, even though, as you say, people might have looked at the scoreline and said, God, what's going on here? Roscommon are only 3 points up, but the wind was so strong. Roscommon came out and, you know, were very professional in the way they went about their business. Shane Canaan came on at half time, did well, won a lot of primary ball around the middle of the field. Ben O'Carroll, I'm sure we're going to get to him, Kieran Murtagh, Colin Neary, Rory Fallon, like a lot of good performances. And yeah, it was just the perfect game, I suppose, Darragh, given that we won just 1 in 5. This is the game that Roscommon needed to get back on track. Now, whether they're really back on track, we're going to find out now on Easter Sunday.
Yeah, that's the thing, and it probably suited us that it was London just off the back of that. You know, I suppose disappointing the way the league final finished. You know, it was very flat for that last 15 minutes. You know, to lose by 10 to Monaghan. I know Roscommon obviously might have had one eye on the championship, but still, it was probably a disappointing finish, and they didn't want that. So, I suppose to have that, just a bit of a break, London, probably a nice game. You know, few days away even for the supporters, and that. You have your 2-week break now for Salt Hill. So just to get that Monaghan game, just, you know, out of the system, I suppose, fully ahead of Galway.
Yeah, and I suppose like Roscommon's schedule has been so hectic, like since the first league game against Down. I think they've played 9 games in 11 weeks, and that's pretty hard going. So, you know, they will be absolutely delighted now that they actually, not that they'll have a weekend off, but they'll have a bit of time now to get onto the training field and, you know, work some things out, things to improve on ahead of the Galway game. But yeah, it was, as I said, it was a professional performance. I think as Shawnee alluded to last week, which you know, these games, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You just go in, you get the job done. You know, the players are able to let their hair down afterwards for a few hours, like enjoy the company of their family and friends. And, you know, that's what these trips are essentially about. And, you know, afterwards, Roscommon people were in a good mood. You know, I think London supporters were in the good mood. Everyone mingled together. So it was, you know, it was a win-win for everyone. And, you know, but the real work starts now. Like, really, you want to see now, you know, where Roscommon are at when they face Galway on Easter Sunday.
Yeah, like, I suppose it is still hard to know where Roscommon are at, because I suppose league isn't championship, so you're hoping Roscommon are going to now start, upping the levels, and I suppose every team looks to play your better football in the championship. Like you watched Galway last night, again, look, they're always going to win the game, but they conceded 20 points to New York. I'm sure they wouldn't be pleased with that. Mayo against Sligo conceded 2-17. So although Roscommon probably we have our faults and probably aren't in great best of form the last month, it's not like Mayo and Galway don't have their faults either.
Yeah, like this is perfectly set up for Roscommon Darragh if they're good enough to take advantage. Like they're going to go into this game under the radar as underdogs. Most pundits will expect Galway to win. But as you know, and Roscommon people know, like Roscommon always seem to have a better chance of beating Galway down in Salt Hill. Haven't beaten Galway in the height in the championship since 1990. We've had some great days down in Salt Hill in recent years. And even in Davy Burke's first year in charge, we went down there and beat them in the league. Even in the height last year, it was a goddamn awful day, and it was, I think, the game was 6 points apiece or something like that, or 9 points apiece. So it was a draw, a low scoring draw. So the Roscommon players crucially will believe that they can go down to Salt Hill and beat Galway. Now supporters mightn't have the same belief, but that doesn't matter. It's down to the players now, and if there's a kick in them, and if our forwards can get enough a ball. Of course we have a chance, but it's going to be a very, very difficult task. But look, we're probably in a bit more positive frame of mind than we were maybe after the league defeat against Monaghan. We're going down there now, believing hopefully that we can do the business, and crucially, the players will believe that because they've done it before. So it's set up for Roscommon for the ambush. Whether they can actually spring that ambush, well, that remains to be seen.
Yeah, because I'm sure they would be watching the game last night, or they will watch it over the next week, and they'll see the joy that some of those New York forwards. New York were probably actually a bit better than I thought they'd be. I mean, they were actually some nice players up front. I think Jack Robinson gave Johnny McGrath a tough time up front. So, you mentioned Ben as well earlier. Ben O'Carroll was probably the big positive. I think he did he get 7 in the end? I think.
Yeah.
In the game, so you'd be hoping if Ben, might be even looking at that and at New York, that hopefully, if the one big positive out of the London game, if we can get Ben O'Carroll back to what he was, a year or two ago, hopefully he can explode on the scene in Salt Hill in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, the key will be getting him enough of ball. I mean, we had ample supply of ball last Saturday. It's a forwards game now, Darragh. I mean, you can see that from the scoreline. Even like for London or for New York to put up 20 points against Galway, once forwards get enough of ball, the opportunities are there to hit 2-pointers or to get the scores to have a healthy tally. So if Roscommon can do their stuff around the middle third and get enough of ball, they've got a chance. I think you just have to accept now in this new environment that we operate in that it's extremely difficult for backs to hold forwards if the opposition is getting so much ball. So it's all about who wins that midfield battle around the middle third. It's all about Conor Carroll getting his kickouts right, getting that kickout strategy right, so that we get enough of ball off our own kickouts, because we seem to be doing quite well on the opposition's kickouts. We just need to get more sort of traction from Conor's kickouts. And if we can do that and get enough of ball into the likes of Ben O'Carroll, Kieran Murtagh was very good again. You'd expect Diarmuid and Enda to really step it up now because it's such a big game. Darragh Craig hopefully will come back into the mix. Like Brian Stack was definitely Tog doing everything with the players in Royslip. So you'd expect he's going to come back into the defence. So the stars are beginning to align now for Roscommon for this game. It's just a case, can they kick on now and spring the surprise? It's actually. When I think about it, it's a small bit maybe like Davy Burke's first year in charge now, albeit we were in better form when we got 8 points in the league. But like the players referenced the Mayo game to him when he came in first, that the Mayo game was the game they were sort of honing in on. And you'd like to think maybe that there's an element of that the players have looked at this Galway game from a long way out. And maybe that explains why Roscommon have been tapering off in the last few league games. Maybe there was a block of training there that they were, getting primed for championship. You just don't know. But the Galway game is nearly upon us now. Galway, John Maher, will he play? He picked up an injury last night. I think Porrick Joyce seemed to dispel kind of worries afterwards that it was serious. But he probably won't be able to do a lot between now and the Roscommon game. what's the story with Comer and Walsh? Were they rested? Is there an injury issues there? Peter Cook is back, but he surely he's not going to come into the panel straight away. That he's another 4 or 5 weeks away. So if Roscommon are good enough, if they can go down there, as I say, get enough of ball and get these forwards into the game, I think there's a big performance in them.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you're going to be judged on championship, and I'm going back to Shawnee as well. I said the same to him last week about, I suppose, Roscommon's first year under Fergal O'Donnell and Kevin McStay. Unbelievable league. I think they could have finished 3rd or 4th that year as well. Big wins, and then like a very poor championship, lose to Clare, and that's what you remember for. Whereas the year after, a terrible league. They got relegated, I think, just about Bet Cavan on the last game. And look, you win Connacht and you draw. Okay, look, the way we lost to Mayo on the replay was disappointing, but pushed Mayo to a replay. And it's seen as a good year. So at the end of the day, Roscommon have done the job of getting promoted to Division 1, even though it nearly doesn't feel like it after the league. So that's job done. So look, you're going to be judged on championship, and hopefully Roscommon will be saving the best football for the next couple of months.
Yeah, that's the hope. That maybe that explains why Roscommon have been running out of gas in the last 15 minutes of these games. Certainly they haven't been as prominent in the second half of games in the latter end of the league as they were in the first half of the league. So maybe they decided that they might just do enough to get promotion and that they will be ready and primed for the championship. And I think it was important they had a strong breeze behind them, but it was important to finish that game on the front foot in Ruislip. Kick those couple of 2-pointers. A great goal by Kieran Murta. That's the sort of football that Roscommon are capable of playing. And as I said, Ben O'Carroll back to his best. But again, you temper that with the reality that he was up against the London defence. It wasn't the Galway defence he was up against. He won't get that space in Salt Hill. So, there's if Roscommon go and spring that ambush in Salt Hill, which we've said they're capable of doing, the narrative around where this team is going will change very, very quickly.
Yeah, and the big thing as well from the weekend, and he didn't play, and you mentioned him, was Brian Stack, and he was tagged. He was there in the team photo and probably doing the warm up and that. So that would suggest if he's tagged for that he'll be. I'd say he'll start, to be honest, in Salt Hill. I think it was a rib injury he had, so you'd imagine he should be still able to be working. Fitness wouldn't be an issue. I'm sure it's a contact thing. So I think all going well, I'd say he'll be starting in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and like Davy Burke referenced that after the game, the Darragh Craig, Brian Stack, they were going to be in contention. He also referenced that there was a lot of frustrated, subs behind them that, felt that they should have got on. Like, it would have been a lovely game for the likes of a Conor Cox or, some of these players to come on and, show what they could do to kick points, especially with the win behind them, because Roscommon had the game won and it was just a case of how much they were going to win by. So, those players now have to prove to him, well, you got to bring me on the next day. And, once again, it was good to see Roscommon's bench make an impact. Cathal Heenan, Shane Canaan. We got 3 debutants like Colin Neary, Pierce Frost and Senan Lamb, so that was another positive out of the game. So, there were a lot of positives, and hopefully now we're just going to carry that into the Galway game and see where it takes us.
Yeah, because whether it's a positive or a negative, I couldn't predict the team that'll start, because there's a lot of, chopping and changing. Like Conor Hand will say starts a couple and he's, on the bench for a couple, and Shane Canaan as well. And I suppose I think Pierce Frost was injured. I think he's come back. But, Niall Higgins, I know he took a knock against Monaghan. He's on the bench. So it's hard. You could probably name maybe 10, but, there's a good few places up for grabs, just judging by I suppose the whole league and the London game there in terms of team selection.
Yeah, I think Davy Burke has used something like, something in the region of the mid-30s in terms of the amount of players in the league. And people will say, well, look, sure, his backline isn't settled. John McManus is full back. Colin Neary is full back. Some days they're not full back or centre back. I think he's settled on Neary now as the centre back. I think that's what he gives us, that bit of dynamism around the middle of the field, so, or in that centre half back area. So I think that's what he settled on. I think if Brian Stack is fit, he comes straight into the full back line at full back. Pierce Frost, as you say, was injured, but Pierce Frost is one of our better man markers, and I think this game was used for him because Pierce Ross was excellent early on in the league in terms of man marking, which you have to do in this with these new rules. You have to be able to sort of that one-on-one defending. You have to be so good at it. And Pierce Frost is one of those players that, you know, can really step up to the plate in that regard. So I think from 8 up, we probably could pick the team. I think Eddie Nolan and Keith Doyle will start in the middle of the field. And then, you know, your 6 forwards, maybe bar one spot might just pick itself. But it's that further back the field where the uncertainty has been. But Davy Burke did say that, you know, he was using the league to try and find his best team for championship. So it was very interesting to note that there was no changes before the team that was named was like actually went out and played. So I think you'll probably see a more settled Roscommon team now going forward.
Yeah, and I suppose the team want to do themselves justice as well against Galway, because like this is 6 years now since Roscommon won a iconic title. You know, it's getting on a bit. It feels a while ago since 2019 now. So I mean, usually the strike rate for Roscommon is maybe 1-2 a decade if you are lucky at Connacht title. So we're nearly halfway through. So and a few of the players, you know, in around that 30 to, you know, or just above the 30-year mark. So look, they'll want to be definitely adding another Connacht title, you know, before they finish up at least. Yeah,
I think a Connacht title is a very valuable currency to this Roscommon team, to any Roscommon team. And as you say, it's usually the 2 a decade, or, you know, maybe 1 a decade. But certainly a lot of our players, our older players, are pushing on now. And you kind of feel that, you know, when they kind of move on, there's probably maybe a period of transition coming where, you know, we're going to have to wait for the likes of the Keith Doyles and the Dara Craigs of this world to become the real leaders on this team when the experienced cohort moves on. So, you know, I think that experienced cohort will see this as an opportunity now, maybe to add another title, a Connacht title to the collection. But it's going to be very difficult. Like, I mean, even if you get over Galway, you probably have to go to Castlebar for a final. So, you know, it's going to be extremely difficult. But all bets will be off, Darragh, if Roscommon went down to Salt Hill and beat Galway.
Well, that's it. Even for morale, obviously, you wouldn't, if you beat Galway, it's fantastic. And look, trust me, no Roscommon team wants to lose to Mayo in any game. But say if you were to lose to Mayo, look, you'll be a second seed at least for the group, and I suppose you'll have that big win at least, you know, coming in with a bit of momentum once you don't lose a kind of final badly. I know I'm looking beyond here, but, you know, even just a win against Galway would do a lot, I think, for the team.
Yeah, I think probably Davy Burke needs a big, you know, championship win in Connacht. You know, okay, we had that memorable evening up in Tyrone last year when, you know, Roscommon beat Tyrone for the first time in the championship. But, you know, in the main, you know, the championship has been, you know, has been disappointing. Obviously, apart from the Mayo result 2 years ago in Davy's first year in charge. But I think Davy Burke will want to. You know, the two managers before him, Kevin McStay and Anthony Cunningham, won Connacht titles. So, you know, I think for Davy Burke, he would like to, you know, to join that list as well. And we're going to see now, you know, if they can realise that goal.
Yeah, just on the general London, New York scenario, and that, are you still in favour of the trips to London and New York? Is that a big Roscommon contingent were in London? There was a big Galway contingent in New York. I think they were nearly taking cash on the gate, letting as many in as they could. New York GA, and why not? You know, it's I think Davy Burke probably said it was nearly like a festival, a carnival atmosphere, and sometimes that's even hard for players when you're going in. You see, you know, everyone living it up outside, but you still have a job to do. Like, you know, it's a good occasion, but in terms of a footballing point of view, would you still be in favour of it?
I suppose, yeah, you've got to look at it from the terms of a footballing point of view and that social occasion. Like, I think if you were to ask supporters, they would be absolutely 100% in favour, because it's a great chance for Roscommon people to come together. Like, this was Roscommon's first trip abroad since New York in 2016. Obviously missed out on London and New York because of COVID. So it was the first global gathering, you could say, of Roscommon people abroad since that. And, you know, you could see yourself, Darragh, people really did lap it up. They travelled from all parts of the county, and people from all parts of England, with Roscommon blood running through them, were there as well. So from that point of view, I think it's very, very important. I think the players and the management, while there are distractions, I think it's good for them to get away as well, and to bond on, whether, especially New York, where you're 4 or 5 days away. I know in New York it can be difficult in the lead up to the game, but you can let your hair down after the game. So obviously I'm not sure if they're going to continue with the New York trips after Roscommon go over there next year. There was talk that they wouldn't. I think the London one will continue for a while, but again, it all depends on how the provincial championships evolve over the next few years. I mean, will their value kind of decrease as we kind of maybe stumble upon the correct format for the All Ireland series? So that'll all play into it. But certainly from a social point of view, I think it's good for Roscommon people to get away and experience these trips, because I can guarantee you, people coming home from London over the weekend and coming home, are talking about we're going to New York next year. That's what they'll be saying to each other. So you can imagine that the plans are been hatched already for a trip to the Big Apple. So, there's enough of bad things going on in the world, as Pádraig Joyce said last night in his interview. The people just need a release, have a weekend away supporting their team, and that's no bad thing.
Absolutely, and I think I was telling you off air what I heard. I wasn't in the tent at the time. I think that the DJ even decided to get the music on a bit before the game was even over. So I think that kind of sums up the bit of the festival and carnival atmosphere. But for the most part, from anyways, on the plane home yesterday, I think it was a little bit more quiet than it was on Friday when I was heading out. All right, I think there was maybe a few sore heads, but for the most part, I think everyone had a very enjoyable weekend. Finally, Ian, as well, just the championship in general. It's still, I mean, look, we're still getting used to it as well. It's like it's only the start of April. We're going to be playing on Easter Sunday. Just lastly, on that Easter Sunday game, are you feeling that bit more confident that Roscommon could pull off an upset?
Yeah, I think it's definitely within their capabilities. It's just that I suppose we haven't seen the form that we've needed to see really to sort of fill us with huge confidence that we can go to Salt Hill and get the victory. But as I said to you earlier, it's within this group of players' capabilities to go to Salt Hill and win the game. And to me, that's the most important thing. And to the players, that's the most important thing. They know they can go to Salt Hill and they can beat Galway. They've done it before. As I said, it's more advantageous for us to be going down to Salt Hill because we just have a better record there. Like Galway and Mayo love coming to the Hyde. We just can't beat them there in championships. So, if there's going to be an ambush, it's going to be in Salt Hill and maybe hopefully in McHale Park down the line. But it's a tough ask. Like Galway were in the All Ireland final last year, would have been hugely disappointed to come up short against Armagh. They have huge talent, and if they get that full team, if Walsh and Comer play, I think it's going to be very difficult for Roscommon. But if there's an injury to one or both of them, well then, it opens up possibilities for Roscommon. So yeah, to go back to your original question, am I confident? I wouldn't say I'm sort of, I'd be cautiously optimistic, let's say, that, we can go there and give a very good account of ourselves. And if we go there and give a very good account of ourselves, well, then we're in with a chance of winning the game. But there's no doubt that Roscommon are underdogs going into the match. But that's the way Roscommon like to be going into these games.